Welcome to the Fantasy Football Clown Show. I'm your host, Ed, along with Justin and Brad, and then two special guests tonight from the Final Four of the Elite Eight. We have Mike and Johnny, and both of them were part of the inaugural season, you could say. And so we brought them in tonight just to kind of pick their brains on their teams, what they were planning as they looked at the board and kind of built the team, and then how they ran it all 14 weeks of the regular season with trades and waiver wire pickups and the depth of the league, and then how they worked their way through the bracket to get to that Final Four and really go for the big dollars. So want to welcome both Mike and Johnny here, and want to just kind of throw the ball to Justin to kind of kick us off with some questions about their rosters, and I'll let him fire away at both of them, and we'll try to share some of their teams as we're doing that. And so take it away, Justin. You lead us with that first question of the day.
All righty, we'll do. Well, I appreciate you guys coming on here with us. Mike, my first question for you is, what was your thought on joining this league with a tight end premium and your overall thinking going into the draft here with your corner?
Well, me and my co-manager Rob, we did a bunch of we'll say mock drafts and to decide where we kind of wanted our spot to be, and we found the 8 seed was pretty good. We get with the third round reversed. A lot of the guys we were aiming for were right around that spot. We said we're comfortable like mid to late rounds. We were doing drafts. We were getting like Jonathan Taylor, or we getting big time like quarterbacks we were happy with. We were happy with Kyler Murray if we could get them around that spot and come back and get Cup, and then it kind of really worked out. We ended up Jonathan Taylor dropped to us in the A spot, and we were like, let's just take him. We were planning on going quarterback first. We were happy with like Kyler or Hurts or somebody around there, but so we just went Jonathan Taylor, and then we ended up getting Cooper Kupp, I think, on the way back, and neither of them made it to our last week either.
Yes.
So we had like some like last minute trades. So maybe we'll talk about that later. But so we like the AC. We weren't, and we were heavy on tight end. We ended up getting Kelsey in the third, and we actually traded up, I think, to get Darren Waller, who didn't even help too much throughout. He had him starting when he goosed on, was that Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football that one week? It was like one play. I think that was one of the only losses we got. That was when Kelsey got like 5 touchdown week. It kind of worked out, but we weren't too set on quarterbacks because we're late round quarterbacks anyways, and we weren't in too many leagues that had like double quarterbacks, and so it kind of hurt us in the beginning, but we really had to navigate through the whole year with quarterbacks. I think we had like 10 different starters. It was wild. We started with, all we had was we started with Stafford was our only starter, and like the week before the season started, we had to trade up and get. Do you want to talk about trades now? Or you want to wait till the end?
Yeah. Go ahead. And when you were in the draft, what were you trading? What were you thinking?
Tyler Boyd and a second for Brissett, and we're like, we'll wait till week 11. If we're still in for week 11, we'll make a big move at the end there, and we'll try to get somebody else if he's not starting, which eventually happened. We had like, we had to get rid of. We kept him. I think he's still on our roster, but we had to acquire Murray. So we traded away, I think, first and Zach Moss for Kyler Murray was like pretty blockbuster trade. That really helped us. But then Murray got hurt the same week, I think, Stafford, and we had to trade off. It was like the Monday Night Football game before the trade deadline, like the last 2 minutes of the game, last 2 minutes of the deadline. We traded away for Goff. We traded the Ferguson, I think it was, the Dallas tight end, and a pick for Goff, and there's another piece in there. I think it was some Fab too. At the end, we were throwing some Fab around, and we ended up Darnold came back somehow. He was like our ace in the hole from like late round. He was one of the last guys off the board I think we had. So
round 25.
yeah,
I pulled up right.
we had Drew Lock, but he didn't work out at all. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that didn't work out. And do we have somebody else in there? I think that might have been the whole gamut of it, but that was a mess. But quarterback was our hardest thing throughout the whole year, and we needed to trade off Cooper Cup and Jonathan Taylor, same Monday Night Football game. We traded them off for a Mixon CMC stack there for those two. So that helped big time to get into at the end, because we were we needed to win week 16 or 13 or 14, last 2 weeks. We need to win one of the two to make to the big bracket, and we ended up winning back to back after that trade. So it worked. So, but it was a lot of fun. So it was hard to navigate, but it was pretty good. But and then I think we need some other trades for a tight end in there. But yeah, it was. So we're not big quarterback people. It's coming to a double quarterback league. Dynasty was different for us, but it somehow worked out. Yeah, well, it was fun. I guess that answered your question. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. You have something for Johnny, Justin?
Actually, the same question.
Okay.
What?
When I went in, I went off the scoring. I got into this league too because it was a larger league. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Ring of Fire that Sleeper did. So I was in that last year, and I really liked the way that it was constructed, and your construction was similar to that.
I'm in it, Johnny. That's why. I mean, that's where it came from, honestly.
Yeah, I got eliminated in the semis in the big bracket of the Ring of Fire last year. So it really interests me, and the scoring was different. And the two tight ends, I have a few leagues that I play in that do have dual tight ends, and it makes it very challenging. And the tight end premium, I really like the way it's a very large roster too to start. So you kind of got to be savvy with drafting. I took the 12 spot because of the 3-round reversal, and I figured at that point I was going to lock myself into at least one or two of the top ranked tight ends at that spot and either get Hurts or Jefferson at that point. And Hurts went right before me. So I kind of had the board dictate how I was going to build a team at that point. At that point, I figured, I went with Jefferson and Andrews and figured, you got the top wide receiver and tight end at that point. And then with the 3-round reversal, I was holding out hope that Kelsey was going to make it back, and he did. So, it kind of worked out ideal at that point. Once I was building a team with that construction, you're pretty much you're building your team in a 2 to 3 year window anyway, in a win now, where I knew I was going to have to go after veteran quarterbacks that I could get much later. What I ended up going with Cousins and Brady, and Daniel Jones is another guy I was able to pick up later for a QB that really nobody wanted, that I still felt had, some potential, left in him with the right system, and he had the new coach there. And it really worked out well for me waiting, for the QBs. It's a dangerous game. I think, as everybody knows, with Superflex, to play it that way. But when you can get the veterans and you're really playing in a 2 to 3 year window, it gives you more flexibility than, it looks like. But I really did like the dual tight end. It makes things very challenging. Getting Kelsey and Andrews, I guess obviously was a large key to the success. That and stacking, I was able to stack, Cousins with Jefferson and Evans, with Brady. So it was able to, kind of push me to pretty high scores weekly and consistently. And even Daniel Jones, I ended up, having Richie James and Hopkins once he started starting. So, and I don't know, running backs to me are really, at this stage of NFL itself and fantasy, are really replaceable and interchangeable. I do regret, I think, a little bit now. I think it was, you guys probably have it in front of you. I think it was the 9th round. I traded my 23 first to get Connor. And
Yes.
it wasn't a horrible move, and there was a tear break there, in my opinion. And, at that point, that's why I made the move. But in hindsight, I would like to have that 23 back, considering. But I mean, overall, the season worked out really well. I really don't have any exciting trade stories, or what I mean, or last second things. Like, it sounds like he did incredibly well with the way that they were able to maneuver around injuries and trades. But I really got pretty lucky, which is key, with having that healthy team and the way that it was built. I really was able to go with the same consistent lineups pretty much all the time.
It's funny you should say, Johnny, I don't mean to interrupt you, but like with injuries and stacks, so you're both talking about, we basically swapped out Cooper Kupp and Stafford stack. Stafford got hurt and Cooper Kupp got hurt like the same week, and Hopkins came back, and we acquired Kyler Murray with a trade, like back to back. So it's kind of like we flipped it. So that kind of, the late round.
It's impressive you navigated through all that. Honestly, it really is.
If you would have had both of them the whole time, that would have been amazing. But injury, that was a scary time. Like, luckily there was no like week gap where we didn't have either Hopkins or Kupp. So that kind of just, we were able to plug him right in there. But that was pretty cool how that worked out. Not for the Rams, but for us.
No, yeah, and I mean, that's what we're interested in, is getting you guys money. Before I just kind of bounce the ball over to Brad for some questions, I did want to just kind of point out that you guys, like where you drafted it, it feels like from us looking on, we really tried to make a scoring system that you could build it lots of ways. Like, we really were focused on how can we make this so that if you want to build heavy tight end or heavy quarterback or heavy, you can go a lot of different directions. I think if there is a weakness, it is the running back position, but very similar to the NFL. Like, they discount running backs, so we discounted running backs, which actually kind of defies the logic of the old-time fantasy player that just puts all the focus on running back. So we actually kind of tried to penalize them, if you will, if they played, old school way. But yeah, I see, Johnny, you beat out the number one draft spot in your Week 15 matchup, and then you played an 11 draft spot in your Week 16 matchup. So, and then Mike, you kind of beat out. I had it here in front of me. You beat out the 5 spot, and then in the next week you beat out an 11 spot. So I feel like they were all over the board where people were pulling their teams from to succeed. We talked a little bit about the Wolfpack. He drafted from the 1, and we have Cowboys and Utes that won the whole thing, drafted out of the 3. And so, to kind of have you guys in the final 4 of from 1, 3, 8, and 12, they were all different draft spots. So you're going to get some sort of different player pool out of the initial draft, and then to see kind of the similarities. And both of you guys have Kelsey. So that was one of our takeaways, that if you can get the number 1 tight end, I guess that matters, here, even if he is 33. But anyway, turning it over to Brad. Brad, what questions do you have for Mike and Johnny?
Yeah, I think my question for Mike would be going on the fragility of running backs. It seemed like you went pretty heavy with running backs by the end, and you kind of faded wide receivers. So I guess my question would be, what was the reasoning behind that? Since I think a lot of people would disagree with how it was built,
I think me and my co-owner, I think we're just old school, like stack the running backs because they always get hurt with this. Whereas running back first, kind of always our thought process, and there's just so many more wide receivers. But I guess with the 4 wide receivers, that kind of evens the playing field. But I think because we ended with like 4 powerhouse running backs was kind of like, what was it? I think it was almost kind of we were forced into it with bye weeks, because the last 2 weeks of the season, like fantasy regular season, I think Montgomery was out. He was on a bye week, and it was a must win. So we had to get somebody to fill in that slot. So that's why we made the Mixon CMC trade and got rid of Kupp. because he wasn't doing us any good if we wanted to win the whole thing. So, and Jonathan Taylor ended up getting hurt anyway, so that kind of helped us in the playoffs. And I think it was, and also the very last week, Jonathan Taylor he had a bye week, so we basically just had to. All our flexes were just running backs at the end there because they were our best players. All of our wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy, and Lockett got hurt. Thielen was like a mid-round guy. We were like, he have something left in there. We got him kind of late, I think. I think just the shots we took on receivers didn't a lot of them pan out, and the running backs just did hit. The ones we like Jacobs and Montgomery, we were able to get kind of later after Jonathan Taylor. So we were like, let's just go with them. I think maybe worried about injuries, and I'm not sure, but just kind of the way the draft kind of led us into it. When they were there, they're the best available. So we can put them in the flex if we have to. It works for bye weeks. We just didn't go. I think taking the Kelsey the third round too, and that kind of took a place of maybe a big time receiver we would have took there instead. So yeah. I guess kind of between. I guess if we looked at it, if you had Kupp and Hopkins and all playing at the finals there, we would have been a little bit more wide receiver heavy because and Lockett
Definitely.
he was rough at the end there. Yeah, we had a lot of injuries.
Yeah, I'm definitely impressed that you guys still got there.
It was wild, but it just seemed to work out. We just somehow was able to plug and play somebody in there. I think we had a trade for Tyler Conklin. We've traded away, was it Pierce? I think so. That would have been a young wide receiver we could have had. We traded away a lot of youth, so we're definitely shooting for wide receiver. I think we only have a third or fourth round draft pick this coming up. That's all we got left because there's only 4 rounds, right?
I think 4 or 5. I'm not even sure.
Yeah,
4.
Yeah. So we only have one. We only have one draft pick. So we only have to trade somebody away for some draft capital, but we'll see what happens. Because right now our top guys are Judy and Lockett. Lockett's getting older, so yeah. Hopkins, we'll see where he ends up if he stays in Arizona or what goes on with him. But he's getting old too, so yeah, we definitely would trade away youth and picks for a win now. Right, once we took off, we're week 10, 11, we were looking pretty good. So we got rid of a lot of youth. So I guess the wide receivers we got backed into because of the draft board and our draft capital and making trades and injuries. A lot of different factors.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Brad, anything for Johnny?
Yeah, my question for Johnny is kind of the same. It looks like you went kind of the opposite and went heavier with the receiver by the end. So what kind of made you think that running back wasn't the way to go?
I mean, just the changing of the game. And to me, you end up during the year with a lot of spot starts at running back, and you can get the same replacement value. I mean, that's why if you notice, like with Khalil Herbert and with Pollard, they're guys I was able to draft, and Wilson. I believe I had Wilson on that team. Yeah, and Wilson were guys that I was able to get at a massive discount if you really look at it, and take, what I end up doing instead of, picking the value there, I was able to go with some proven receivers. I mean, Keenan Allen, Mike Evans, and I was able to sprinkle in some youth at the receiver too. So I wasn't too old or just veteran laden, like with Christian Kirk, and things like that. So to me, it's the carries, especially like Pollard, being on a good offense. He's just as good to me as most of the running backs once you get outside of the top 12. You know what I mean? Elite. And, like I said, for me too, spot starts, when you're gaining, to me, if I'm getting that elite, receiver, I know people shy away from them in Dynasty, when they're getting older, when you got your Keenan Allens and Evans. I mean, even Hopkins, even though he was out. I mean, I didn't have Hopkins on this team, but those guys, they still produce. And it seems like people forget that, I mean, that's the name of the game, is to get fantasy players that produce. It's not always having the youngest guy that's going to be there on your team for 5 years. Because you look at most teams that you draft, if you look at your team 2 or 3 years later, you're probably going to have, if you're a competitive team, a third to 2/3 of your roster that's different than when you started. So at that point, to me, it's just value. You always can make moves, to get younger. And the way the board went, really opened me up to that too. I always try to be open going into it. I mean, you always have some kind of plan, but
Yeah.
it's dictated by what people are going to allow you to do. It becomes a big value game. And I mean, the wide receivers, I think you guys are fairly unique, at least in most of the leagues I'm in, with the start 4. And I did like that. You know what I mean? With the start 4, it puts such an emphasis on having some elite producing receivers, because that pool gets thinned out very quickly. I mean, at that point, it really changes your mindset of where to go. It almost, like I said, made running back secondary. I did make that jump, like I said, with when I traded for Connor, because I really thought Arizona was going to have a better offense, and I thought there was a huge tier break there, and I thought it was worth the value. But really, I think the way, the scoring set up and everything, wide receiver is just huge. Outside of the tight end, to me, it was just as important, of really being stacked in those areas. And like you guys said, I love the scoring because it did give you that opportunity no matter what spot you drafted from. I think it was huge with the 3-round reversal. You almost have to have now, because it can be difficult to build teams without having elite QBs anymore. And this really, your scoring and everything gives you, in the roster construction, it really does give you a lot of different ways you can go. Like you guys said, you look at how everything ended up. You had people in the finals of every quadrant of the draft, realistically. So I think you guys did a great job, with setting this up and the scoring and really even everything out and giving everyone an opportunity from no matter where you were slotted, to be competitive.
Awesome. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, thank you for that, Johnny. And just to kind of ask you guys a little bit where you are in your fantasy. From me, it'll be more about kind of the whole experience as whole, and then maybe where you are fantasy wise, like in your gameplay. Mike, how many teams do you have? Maybe dynasty teams. That's kind of where my focus is, and so I think we all play some redraft, but it's kind of a smaller version of what we do. How many dynasty teams do you have currently?
I have 2.
Okay.
And this is my first year doing dynasty in both of them.
Oh, awesome. I mean,
Rookie
so
time.
to get there, to get to the Final Four, one of my questions kind of, I'll circle back once I get to Johnny, but, is like, what do you see for the future? Because, that's awesome because you're able to spend a bunch of time. I know my first time I actually started with 2 as well, and now it's become a really crazy habit that is like many. But Johnny, how many teams do you have? Dynasty teams?
It's between 40, somewhere between 40 and 50.
Okay, very good. And do you find that this one, and you told us that you were part of Ring of Fire, and I too am in Ring of Fire, and I play that very differently than I play every other league, and I think it's because I'm scared. I mean, I really play the damn league scared, like I really do, and I'm gonna pick both Justin and Brad's brains over the off season on my team there, because my team has finished with I think 11-11 both years. I've been the 6th seed both years. In both years, I've won week 12 and lost in week 13. So I've been out in the first round and not made any money. And I'm just like a stagnant team. My Joe Burrow, Dalvin Cook guys are just getting older every year. And Cordell Patterson sucks in the future. So he's been good for the last 2 years, but now he'll be terrible. And so my team is going to be old and falling off a wheelchair, and I can't do much about it. So, what do you think is different or the same about the Elite Eight, I guess, compared to Ring of Fire, Johnny? If you were to throw that there,
I mean, very similar, I think, and even on the competition-wise type thing. I mean, it's a gauntlet to get through. These teams, especially as you get to the larger brackets. I mean, the teams are stacked. I kind of went. I'm trying to remember the original draft from last year. I think I got a little bit even lucky the way some of the boards fell for me in Ring of Fire. I built that team different than this league. Like this league, there's much more emphasis on the tight end and wide receiver, where to me, Ring of Fire was more of kind of the traditional super flex setup, if you will, even a little bit heavier on running back value. So very to me, even though they're only like a year difference from being out, like this that you guys are doing to me now is kind of like the new NFL and the new fantasy and how it's going to play out from here on in. Like I'm almost 50. I'll be 50 in April. So I've been doing fantasy since we were doing it with phone calls, on the landline over the commissioners and, doing everything by hand. So it's the changing of the game and everything, the way that it's evolving, is so different now. Even drafting now, you're talking about whoever would have drafted a wide receiver. Think about drafting a wide receiver within the top 8 picks. Is totally unheard of. And for me, this league and the way it worked out with Jefferson, it was a steal to get him at 112.
Oh yeah,
you'll see him this year. He's going to go right after the elite in Superflex anyway. You're probably going to have your elite 8 quarterbacks where everyone's going to take, I think, from now on. Lock those up, and then you'll have Jefferson, come off the board. But this seemed a little more immersive to me, if you will, than the Ring of Fire. Not that I'm saying anything bad about the Ring of Fire.
No.
But this just involved more strategy, more thinking, and it just really brings you into where the NFL is with the wide receivers having importance on it. I like having the 4 because everyone knows those pretty much now are the most important players on the field in the NFL outside of the quarterback.
Sure. Christian Kirk will say that he got a lot of money to be a receiver. I know that, right? Christian Kirk will echo that. He got a lot of money to be a wide receiver in the NFL anyway.
Yeah. And that paid off better for Jacksonville than everyone thought. I remember everyone was they were screaming, bloody murder. This guy's overpaid. He had a pretty good year.
Yeah, great year for them. They're still playing in the playoffs. I think they'd be, after year 1, they'll be very happy with the investment. But I guess where I was echoing what you said, I think, they were able to trade away James Robinson for pennies on the dollar because running backs just aren't that important in the world of the NFL. And so
100%. That's how it is in fantasy now. Outside of the top 4 or 5, who are you really going to pay for anymore?
That's just true. So back to you, Mike. And I guess you were coming out of a division for the Final Four that also had we put the top 16 teams in that first round of playoffs, and so out of your division of 12, we actually had 2 that went on to the Final Four, including our champion, who was actually the 11th seeded team out of those 16.
Yeah.
We actually basically had the first seed, which was Johnny, and had the best record out of everybody in the whole tournament at 13-1, and then we had 2 12-2 teams, and then we had an 11-3 team, Wolfpack, that was our 4 seed. So we kind of had the 1, the 3, the 4, and then the 11 seed, and the 11 seed won the whole thing. So that was an interesting observation. And then, but even kind of bigger than that, we were sitting in the Final Four, and the rest of these three guys win their division, and here you are with a 12-2 record overall, and you guys are basically in the division just getting $100 back or your money back. And I'm like, how did they have such a great season, and then it just like one bad week like I feel like it wasn't quite one bad week, but it was like, wow, geez, that just falls apart pretty quick.
Yeah,
So,
that's tough.
Yeah, he took off. Yeah, he went boom. I think he took out the Turkleton was that the other big name he took out.
Turkleton was the one that got,
Yeah. His team just took fire, and he was killing it all year. Me and him were going back and forth. He was the 1 seed for probably the first 10, and then there was a third team, Mystical Child. He was doing, it was neck and neck. We all played each other in the last 3 weeks of the season, so it was a toss up between the three of us who was going to make it and who wasn't. So because I think me and Cowboys, we went 1-1 on the season. We both 1-1. He beat me earlier in the year, and then I beat him the very last week of the regular season. But yeah, then we met again later on. He took the whole thing, but it was pretty good. And it's funny. He's our division, and then he's a Cowboys fan. I'm Eagles, so it's a interdivisional rivalry within the division. So it was fun.
That's perfect.
Yeah. So
that is, and I was looking for it here where we did some predictions earlier in the year, guys, and we were kind of on the show doing some stuff, and now I need to look and see if we gave you guys any love. Just because.
Probably definitely not, because we had one quarterback to start the year.
Yeah, I probably
Yeah.
I've got to tell you, Ralston, Mike, we nobody liked you. None of the three of us liked you at all. We had like hatred going on. We like Mystical Child. We like Cowboys and Utes. We like Zeke. Looks like we have a lot of Zeke lovers in your and Justin, you like the Riverbed. I don't know, like where that was. But I don't know if he was any good or not, but we were. You were on him, and I was on Will K. So I guess that
it was competitive. People really, even just to get into our individual playoffs. Like it came down to the last week. Like the 6 and 7 and 8 seed all had a chance. I think it was good. It was a fun time. But yeah,
I feel like we were talking about Johnny all year long, though, kind of every week. Where we were kind of talking about whether he was kind of coming on, but. Surprisingly, even though he's 13-1, he was running into the right competition because Turkleton had 300 more points in his starting lineup over the course of the year. So that was a fairly large, discrepancy from 1 to 2. Really, I mean that was, when we go from 2 to 3, it was like a point difference. We have 300 points from 1 to 2. So it was kind of like a big difference between. The amount of points that were scored there. So that was kind of crazy. I was thinking as you guys were talking, I really draft and I like Johnny. I think I have, I'm down to 60 teams, but last year I had 100. So, I used to have a ton and I drafted about like that. I just sort of go into a draft. I have a higher value on quarterbacks than most people, as long as it's a super flex league or 2-quarterback league, because it's a limited position with supply. That's really
100%.
The economics of it is that, and tight end in this kind of a format, I actually saw somebody take 22 tight ends in a draft. It wasn't one of these clown head drafts, but it was just a 2 tight end. And I think that I've been kind of watching that team for now its second year, and I think that there's something to that team too. Like he's basically monopolized where people like me are starting like the 3rd string Packers tight end. Like we're just starting somebody that you never heard of before off the scrap heap every week. And
they just have such an advantage in that position locked up that
you just don't have anywhere to go on the waiver wire, and so it's a 0, and that's a problem. Like you just can't beat the 0. So I guess like that, I just really draft value. And in the rookie draft stuff coming, I mean, I think I didn't make very many trades. I saw both of you guys made some trades. I'm not a big trader. I guess I like other people to make emotional decisions. And when they make emotional decisions, I just rely kind of like the house in blackjack. Just let them make mistakes. And I just stay the course, stay the course, stay the course. Now, Johnny, you said something that kind of stuck out to me, and maybe I can learn from that, is that, you just don't get so afraid of the older players. So I was going to ask both of you guys, and you guys can just jump in. Where do you see your team in the future? Because when I look at it, I'm like, oh, both of you guys have Kelsey, but that feels like a 33-year-old. What's he going to be like at 34? And is that going to you guys got money, so you made money. And I always say, if you can make money, then trading away the stuff makes sense as long as you cash a check, then you do it. But if you don't, man, it feels like you traded away your future and have no check to cash, and that would be scary. But what are your thoughts on the team going forward?
Oh, it's gonna be rough. It's gonna be. I think this year it's gonna be okay. We'll be competitive, but the wide receiver, we're gonna need to make some moves. We're gonna definitely try to find some. I don't even know. We're gonna need some wide receiver help. So we're gonna trade away running back for wide receiver. We right now we have potentially 4 starting quarterbacks. So we might be able to trade one away, but I got Darnold, Stafford, Murray, and who's left?
Goff, I think.
Goff, yeah. No, okay, Goff. So we got 4 potential starters, so maybe just trade one of them away for a little, but they're all pretty old. We don't have a lot of youth, so maybe this year and next year, but we'll be rebuilding like probably a couple of years. So we definitely had once we hit late in the season, we're win now. Let's try to make a run now while we can, because it's gonna be hard to do it later on down the road when we got it. So it's the first, probably next year will be okay. We'll be competitive, but years after that's going to be, we'll probably be restart rebuilding now. So we're happy with this year. We made a good run. We almost took it. We're 1 week away. So
yeah, no, that's right. And you were in there fighting for it till the end. What do you think, Johnny? How do you feel like your team stacks up? I mean, I guess Justin, definitely, like you said, is fine. That part.
Yeah,
fine.
I mean, there's still some. I mean, I tried to not sell out too much, like to play in a 1-year window. I mean, you know what I mean? Playing in a 2 to 3 year window, I mean, that's really what I have. And I knew that going in. It wasn't win or bust, because I still felt I had at least next year behind me without, too many worries to where I'm gonna be like, oh my God. And I only had to trade my first at least. So I was able to hold on to my other picks where, you can find some replacements there. But I mean, of course, Kelsey's a concern. I mean, but Evans, Allen, I still feel they'll be productive. But I mean, I'm going to start to have to move pieces around and make some decisions over, the next year. I don't think it's at a critical state at this point where I need to blow it up, say, all right, well, I made some money and had a great year. I still think I have some room to maneuver and still be definitely solid next year, but I have to start moving pieces around and doing some things, to quarterback's going to be a concern. And that's the name of the game, like you just talked about. And once I was in that direction of the draft, I knew that's where I had to go, because I needed production. You're not looking at, oh, this guy's going to be good in a couple of years, and that's how I ended up with Cousins and Brady. Cousins probably have a couple of years. Brady, I don't know if he's ever gonna. I don't know how old he is anymore. I think he's older than me, but I mean, Daniel Jones really worked out well, especially for the value that I got him.
Yeah.
And for him now to, really, that was a bonus for me, because I didn't know if it was just going to be this year, and I was just trying to get what I could get for him. But, it looked like beginning of the year they were going to move away from Jones. Oh. And him staying is that's huge. If they end up and they put some weapons around him, that helps me a lot. It doesn't make it so desperate for me anyway,
I gotcha. So me and Justin can always add to the mix that we were 12th place teams in the Elite Eight, right? Or Justin, were you 12th place?
I finished. I finished 7th and 1, just out of the playoffs.
I'm in the Elite Eight. I think we were down. in the Elite 8. I think. Well, I was 11th place. I think by realisticness, I think I beat the last place team. But yeah. But we kind of took this opposite approach of just like insanely being young, and we were just like insane about. At least I was insane about building young and being young, and then figured my team will just kind of come into its own as all these pieces were moving around. But Brad, were you in the playoffs in like the top
Yes,
6?
yeah.
What did you see to your team? Like if you compare it to those Final Four teams, what do you think is, what did they do that you didn't? Like what did they do to get themselves where they're trying to go that you said, hey, I'm just going to lose money because it's fun?
Well, I mean, they had talent at every position, that's for sure.
Okay.
I mean, my team, I definitely faded receiver, so I went really young. So I got guys like Etienne, Damian Pierce, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, and a lot of it ended up working out. But I was rolling guys out like Richie James at receiver, and and Isaiah Hodgins at number 2 by the end of the year.
So, I mean, and I follow a couple guys, I guess analysts or experts or whatever you want to call them, but one is Jeff Ratcliffe, and I drafted with a whole bunch of his guys in a best ball draft, and it was one quarterback, but I kind of purposefully decided I was going to fade receiver just to see what would happen, because he says, hey, draft one running back and then fade it the whole way and go punt RB2 was his mantra. And I'm like, screw that. I'm going to punt wide receiver 2. So I drafted Justin Jefferson, and then I didn't have another receiver until I took Robert Woods in the 11th round. So like I legitimately went.
You really faded.
Of nothing.
You stuck to your guns.
and I won. I won first place. Like it was just boom. And I just had every running back known to man. Like I had 7 of them. And it was best ball, but they just floated them in. I mean, they were just like, I had Zeke and I had Saquon. I mean, I just had the whole gamut. So it didn't matter that they would get injured because I just had more to put in. Like I just always had more. And I do follow his philosophy a little bit with Superflex. Like he does think, and maybe I guess I'd look to you guys to see. He thinks that you wait till 10 quarterbacks come off the board and then you take 2 right away. I mean, what do you guys think of that? Does that make any sense? Then you're getting middle tier quarterbacks or quarterbacks between 10 and 20. You're getting 2 of them. But do you think you can get enough in a dynasty, or is that more of a redraft kind of idea?
I tried that. It kind of worked. But because we took Stafford, he was like the number 11 probably go off the board. And then I think there was we went Stafford, and then the next round, they all went boom, 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 right down. I think the next post I was like Drew Lock, and he wasn't even guaranteed starter yet. Yeah. And then it was well, we'll see if he wins the job in camp. If not, we'll make a move. And he didn't win it, so we had to make a move. So I think he could, but it's risky.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the question was, take the first 8 QBs and then what? I think I missed it.
Let 10 quarterbacks get drafted and then hit it hard with 2. Like your next 2, wait till 10 go off the board and then get 2.
Yeah, see, I don't. I would go value at that point, because at that point I kind of play opposite. I want to gain the advantage at the other positions, instead of, to me, grabbing the quarterbacks just to grab them and almost feel safe that you got a guy that's starting doesn't mean a whole lot to me if he's not good.
Well, they're thinking quarterback 11 to 20, you'll get 2 of those. So you're not quite, you don't have any top end, but you also don't have any below 20.
That's what I mean. So to me, though, the points or the wins over replacement, you look at between all the other guys you can get, or you could have drafted this year, that even had spot starts or things like that. You know what I mean? A lot of my leagues, I was able to make it through even with the pickups of Garoppolo and Purdy. Mm-hmm. And you look at their scoring wise, they're not much different than some of those quarterbacks that are around. You know what I mean? The 12. Once you get past the elite, if you want to call it what do you call it? 9, maybe in that elite tier, and 4 or 5 in the super elite tier now. I don't know. You know what I'm getting at? I just always go. I got to go for that top value to gain that positional advantage at that point, instead of taking the QB, and then I'm daring the people after me to take those QBs I passed on. So then it leaves the value back for me coming back around the 3rd and 4th round, if you know what I mean, because they're picking up the QB, the 12, 13, and 14 in valued spots in the 2nd and 3rd round, where normally, you can clean up with top tier, wide receivers and running backs. So I kind of go hard opposite. I'm not saying the other can't work, but I just mean, as for me personally, at that point, I feel like I'm not going to have the top QBs. I don't have to have a QB just to have a QB. At that point, I'm just trying to swing the tables. It's tough drafting from the 12 at times, especially if it's not 3-round reversal.
Right. Now, I think Brad, Justin, and me all drafted from the 12, didn't we? Did you? I know I did. Brad,
I did not.
You didn't, Justin? Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure where you did.
Drafted the 8th and took JT, and that didn't work out too well.
I think JT at 8 is good. Like I'm taking him every time there too. Like Johnny said, I'm like stubbornly just stay to my list. Like I don't care. In Dynasty, I don't care if I win this year. Like I just stay stubborn to the program, and I just let value drop. And I could care less. Like people laugh at me because my team in May is way different than what I'm going to start in September, and I always have that in my mind. Like I'm not trying to draft starters and bench. I'm just trying to draft best player.
It's all value. Yeah, it's all value.
And let people. I even talk smack on a board to get people to prop up value. And you guys that watch my chats all know that I feel like I'm pretty good at it, actually, making everybody look at things that don't exist and create alternative realities of things and try to prop up value in what I earn. And then I go, like right now, if I have the 2 pick in a rookie draft, I'm preaching quarterbacks, because really I probably want a running back. The real goal of them is to feel obligated at 1 to take a quarterback so that I get the running back that I want. I want people to.
I know you mean, yeah.
And so I just always create this reality where you won't get a quarterback because I have pick 2 and 3, and the only way you're going to get one is if you trade me your firstborn son or something. Maybe I want 2 sons, but yeah.
That's interesting that we're talking about this. What you look at the draft this year, right? I think we all agree Bijan's the 1-1, right?
I think so. He goes to Tennessee, probably not, but yeah, beyond that.
Yeah, after that, though, how do you see it playing out? Maybe even with yourself or the fantasy community. Do you think they're at that point of what we're talking about with the QBs, that it's going to be Stroud, Young, Levis, Richardson?
I gotta think that it's got to be similar to 2020 when we had the toss up of half the year Burrow went number 1, half the year CEH went number 1, because that same he got drafted by the Chiefs. Everybody thought he was generational, and they were talking all this craziness.
Yeah, I know.
And
I had him in a couple leagues. I'm not gonna lie.
People were drafting him number 4 overall in a startup like CEH, and then they, it was like this frenzy. And then I look at 2021 and I say, okay, went Trevor, Trey Lance, Kyle Pitts was thrown in there, but then Justin Fields. I mean, they were just hammering the heck out of, and then Najee maybe coming in behind in the top 5. And then, you get to the back end and you had guys like Chase and Mac Jones and Zach Wilson kind of in that next, with ETN and Javonte. So, I mean, it was kind of like, I kind of look at those and say, okay, what's similar or different about this class? And I think everybody right now is feeling like this is like the Barkley, Josh Jacobs kind of running backs to the top. But I think that the frenzy of quarterbacks if they get drafted, especially if they get drafted number one. And
if they get that first round, that equity of being drafted in the first round, oh yeah, that changes everything. Yeah.
Well, and I made a living this year drafting Pickett, early in the first round of rookie draft.
I like Pickett more than most. So everyone laughed at me for drafting him where I drafted him, but I think the value is there. I do.
Well, and I mean, I track everything, so I have like every rookie pick that I made. I think I drafted in 78 rookie drafts this year, and so I have all my picks. And yeah, I was averaging picking in 2 quarterback leagues, 2, 3, 4, that range, which was higher than everybody else. So I got 39 versions of him. I have 39.
I had everybody giving me shit. I know that.
Well, he's a starting quarterback. At minimum, we know that about him right now, right? He's
agreed. Yeah.
And then I faded the second round guys, like in our rookie drafts. In other words, like I don't have very much Ritter, or any of those guys that aren't playing. I actually have a bunch of Howell because I was able to get him in the third, and so
I like Howell. Yeah.
Well, it was just a third round guy, and the only other third round guy I really liked was Velus Jones. I drafted a bunch of him and drafted a bunch of Romeo Dobbs. So I mean, those were the guys that I was pulling at those spots, and I feel like, yeah, you once you get later in the draft, then you can sort of pick up your players that you think, okay, these guys got a shot, and then you just throw your darts and go for them, and
there'll be a ton of value in the second round this year, though, much more than last year.
Okay, good to know. Like that's, well, in parting, guys, I know we try to keep everything under an hour, so we're gonna part ways here really soon. Any last minute questions, Justin, Brad? You guys have anything in parting?
Cut me on the spot. I don't have another question for you guys.
Justin isn't talking anymore. No, I'm kidding. Well, I want to thank you guys. Thank you for playing, but thank you for coming on. I know it's different to come on live and stream with us, and we just enjoy just chatting football. So thank you guys.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate you guys doing it. I know all the time and work that it takes, to do things like this, and the way you guys do this and you do your radio show, really promoting fantasy football itself in the community, that's grown so large now. It's really impressive the way you guys did it professionally. It was a little different than, like I said, I have 50 teams, and it was different than every other team that I have, which is very nice to see. So I just want to say I think you guys did a great job. I appreciate the effort.
Well, we thank you for that, and for now,
Thank
so
you,
long till next time.
Okay. Thanks.